TruthSeekah and/or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and/or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark savage!
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark-sided stuff!
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is the TruthSeekah podcast. I'm your host, TruthSeekah, and I'm excited and delighted to be with you guys again today. We're going to be discussing all things spirituality, and all things considered. So thank you guys for joining us. Everybody listening live on YouTube, everybody in the chat hanging out, everybody in Discord. If you're listening to the podcast on the podcasting apps, driving, wherever you are, man, thank you for spending this time with us. And so we're going to get into some good conversation. Much love to everybody. Can't go any further without saying a huge thank you to all the Patreon supporters. Again, we are listener funded, listener supported. So thank you guys for believing in the work, believing in the vision, and jumping aboard with me on this thing. So huge shout out to you guys. So everybody who's doing that, thank you. Some of the latest people within the last week or so to jump on board. You guys are the enablers. You enable this. So thank you. Huge shout out to Russell Bell. Thank you for coming on. Connor Smale. Thank you. Cameron Galloway and Isis Agate. Thank you guys for believing in the work and coming on and partnering with me. It means the world. So thank you for co-creating. Can't do this without you. If you'd like to support, head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There you get access to my entire discography of music, which is 200 plus songs. I'm recording new music now. Just put up 2 new songs that's going to be on the 2 EPs coming up. I have the Colors EP, which is about or influenced by each chakra. And then we also have the ESP EP that's coming out as well. And so there's already tracks done for both albums. And one of them is almost complete. You get access to that already. Like it's already up. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. You also get access to our Thursday night School of the Mystics. This is the community aspect to what we're building here, and we've been breaking into groups and trying to listen to that voice of intuition, that inner ear, the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Most of you have been hearing that your whole life but don't know how to step out and activate that. So that's where we kind of come together in a safe space. We go through materials together, but the hands-on part is really cool, breaking off into pairs and pretty much doing readings for one another, whatever we feel. And so we've had some powerful experiences. And so if that sounds like something you want to be a part of, make sure that you head on over there. Check that out every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central, patreon.com/TruthSeekah. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on today's guest. This is my friend, David Solomon. We're going to be talking about magic, spirituality, and everything in between. Brother, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fantastic, like a band of elastic, doing really well.
we already covered a bunch of topics already before we went live, man. And I hate talking with people before the show because there's always like some good information. I'm like, man, this is good for everybody. So I was wanting to hurry up and start it, man, and everything that we've covered. I started talking to you about consistency. I want to cover that. There's a bunch of other things, even on your website, that really interest me, and I'm going to pick your brain about some of these things too. But before we get started, before we go into some of that stuff, man, kind of introduce yourself, tell people who you are, where you come from, what you bring to the table. Just kind of give them a quick background on what you do.
Yeah, brother. Well, thank you so much first for inviting me on the show. Really grateful to be here and to show up in an aligned way and live a purpose and bring a lot to the world. So David Solomon, right now I live in the Bay Area of California. Soon I'm going to be splitting time between here, LA, and Damanhur, which is an Atlantean mystery school in Italy. It's a beautiful space. It's growing quite heavily. It was a very transformative experience and a big extra awakening to go. Lot of interesting things to share about that. But I was made for / made myself / created this body, mind, personality construct from a higher dimensional perspective before this incarnation to help bring more magic into the world and everyone's lives. And as soon as I was 5, I knew I was just obsessed with magic, all different types, but usually not stage magic. And I'm still working on getting aligned with the right spelling because there's so many synonyms. Like the Bible has words for magic that are not really harmonious with modern day divine embodiment expressed naturally through the manifestation of miracles, which is what I call magic. Arthur C. Clarke said, sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And now with really, really great, well-researched scientists like Dr. Joe Dispenza in Becoming Supernatural and Dean Radin in Real Magic, we finally have some of the bibliography, the citations, the data, the peer-reviewed stuff, the odds against chance for different things related to healing the body of cancer, of shattered vertebrae, blessing chocolate and having a physiological measured response in blood test and fMRI, validate the applied science of consciousness, which is another synonym for magic as people get into my newsletter and stuff, affecting the world. So I've astral projected, I had rituals, I had some very successful spells when I was 12 to 16. I was doing Reiki, I was doing tarot readings. About 4 or 5 years ago, I had a very, very significant awakening where I really popped out of this mortal identity, seeing, of course, this is has been a main way of interacting with the world, but realizing, there's so much liberation in realizing our history. Whether you are somebody you believe you have a few couple past lives or a few dozen or a few hundred, or you are at the level of knowing where you are all things and all lives simultaneously, you can tap into a few at a time that are the most relevant. I've dedicated myself to a path of service magically. And so what that looks like is in the short term right now, I have my first 7 books coming out. My first book is already published, Magic is Real, on Amazon. The audio book is by a good friend, Jack Reeder. It's in this epic wizard voice, like Gandalf, full soundtrack, honestly, more music than I've heard in any audiobook. I know I'm kind of doing a little light bragging, but it's all his work.
That's
he did
awesome.
a great job.
Yeah.
I have a wizard school that people can join that is just videos that I create to help people learn the foundations of magic, purification, awakening, advanced abilities, psychic abilities, things like that. I do one-on-one sessions, group sessions, retreats, and I have a pretty active Instagram at Sorcerer David.
I just followed.
Thanks, brother. Where most days I have at least one video, and it could be inspiration, it could be motivation, but it's usually wrapping in spiritual concepts like love, forgiveness, surrender, transmutation, alchemy. And a few of the topics I teach that people have had really great results with, manifestation is huge, awakening psychic ability, strengthening intuition, money magic, healing stuff related to money. It's not evil, it doesn't mean it's greedy, it's just energy. So healing that, clearing debt, attracting more wealth and abundance, working with divinities, so Lakshmi, Thoth, Horus, Krishna, Apollo, Christ, depending on individual's comfort level, and embodying divinity. And most importantly, in the next 10 years, working on building 3 big temples. Temple of Thoth to raise the power levels of magic. Can we grow trees more quickly? Can we heal people more quickly? Temple of Lakshmi for abundance, providing subsidized housing to the poor, helping clear national debts. And Temple of Aphrodite for education and healing for all matters related to love, sexuality, abuse, connection, all those things that mainstream culture is getting better at, but we're still pretty far from it. So that's a start.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think the perfect response for me is the same response from my friend Matt Belair when you was on his show. I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know where to go. But I do know. I got some questions for you, man. That's awesome. So in that, I've got some questions, something I want to ask you. We'll get to it a little bit later. But in that, which you just kind of unpacked a little bit, Damanhur, like, that's a freaking dream. I want to go there. How was that, man? Does it have anything on Cosm and Alex Gray? Like, this place is kind of newly found as well, right? They didn't even know this place existed underground, right?
So Damanhur, I'll give you a bit of history of it, but essentially I will be leading trips to Damanhur. They have a school of alchemy, school of healing, art, community, mystery school, meditation school. Damanhur was founded about 30, 40 years ago, and it did start underground. They actually built temples underground without a permit. And you can look at it when you go there and get some of the books, really excellent books. The Synchronic Lines is probably good to start with. Damanhur.org has a lot of stuff. And these temples, they didn't have permits. So they would blast rock music to cover the construction. When the police came and brought explosives, because it was illegal construction, they were so moved by the temples. Hall of Creation, Blue Room, now there's a Hall of Alchemy, of metals. There's a Hall of Mirrors, literally a Hall of Mirrors. And they left with tears from the Hall of Mirrors maybe now. And so Damanhur has been slowly reaching out to the public. Their founder, Falco, left his body a few years ago. He didn't want to be a figurehead. And aside from deep connections and my experience, what other people could experience, Damanhur is growing. They have a lot to offer. It is the real deal. And it's nice that it's a bit of a drive, 15 minutes from a small town, 45 minutes from a bigger town nearby in Turin or Torino.
Yeah.
They really take it seriously, but they really play a lot. So there's a lot of families, there's a lot of community houses, there's a lot of labyrinths you can walk, there's a sacred woods, there's a lot of tours, there's healthy food.
How big is it? It looks really big.
As of last year, was about 600 citizens. And I'd say there's another 300-400 visitors, guests, people who live nearby but aren't official citizens.
Oh, so they kind of turned this into a little city commune in itself? It's not just a temple?
They have a capital, they have currency.
Wow.
When I was there, I didn't use too much. But if, for people who want real immersion and magical training, Damanhur is it. And their programs are very accessible. The intensives are like 17 days. There are 6 hours of curriculum a day as of last year, very hardcore focused. And then you can also go like 1 weekend a month. And they're very chill. They're super liberal. The only big rules they have are no smoking or illegal drugs on campus. I know there's a big movement for plant medicines nowadays, but Damanhur, and I'm learning a lot of this too, how to activate heightened abilities and transcendental experiences without significant biochemical shifts.
It actually looks like you're stepping into a psychedelic experience because of all the art and things when you're there.
You are, and I walked their labyrinth of memory. And while I walked that labyrinth, I just felt such a shift that my third eye was so open that while I was even looking at the surroundings and walking through the stones, I had the memories come in of Moses and the Jewish people and Pharaoh during the Exodus, of the German people during enslavement with Crowley and Hitler teaming up before, during, and after World War II, and then of Krishna in a council choosing to descend and then offer the Bhagavad Gita and banish a bunch of demons. And those memories of the collective soul of humanity came in while I was walking this labyrinth. And that's stuff that, was pretty high level and you usually only hear about in an ayahuasca retreat.
Yeah.
So there's, for anybody who really wants to grow and wake up and you can afford a trip to Italy, it's a really incredible experience. And if you want to guide it or with a group, I'll probably be leading them next year. It's based on interest, so people can hit me up. Again, magicalgoldenage.com or instagram.com, Sorcerer David. And they have a great calendar online. Their Wi-Fi isn't extremely great. They don't have a community of English speakers who can take a lot of time with tourists aside from teachers. So you go to bring a community, but they're growing quite fast, which is beautiful.
My wife is listening right now. Hello to my wife, Erin. And just take notes, babe. I would like to go one day. We need to go together. Italy. That's a bucket list thing for real. But okay, so they don't really encourage plant medicines and psychedelics and things like that. It's its own psychedelic experience in itself. You mentioned a couple years ago, tapping into higher realm states of consciousness, looking at reality, what it is, all of this stuff. Now, and I wanted to ask you when you were kind of giving your talk on that, but was it through psychedelics? Was it through holotropic breathing and meditation? How, when you first tapped in, did you access those higher states of consciousness that really changed your life?
Yeah, brother. Honestly, there were 13 different avenues, different venues. There were many.
All of them are good, right? All of them were needed. Yeah.
All of them are good.
One's not better than the other, right? I mean,
not better overall. Certain things can be more effective than others. So
yeah.
I'll share this, and with a slight disclaimer that everybody lives their own truth. And I would highly encourage, while I'm not advocating the use of anything that's illegal, and everybody should always check with their healthcare provider. Disclaimer before doing anything. We all walk our own path, and each of us has a unique truth. So my experience is, anybody listening or watching are, I'm a reflection of you. We're all one, and you're your own person. So while you may be able to learn from and borrow from and learn more quickly from me because I'm summarizing things, always tune into yourself and work with a live teacher who is pure of heart and offering things without ulterior motive. So the primary methods of what some could call awakening. Awakening is starting to feel a bit like enlightenment. It feels like it could be a bit spiritually materialistic, so I refer to both as a continuum. Ken Wilber says the best way to reply to the question, are you enlightened, is, are you enlightened enough? Because a yes or no can get you in trouble. So I worked with a wonderful teacher who runs a great school. Her name is Annalisa Adelberg, and I had probably over 100 sessions with her. And when I saw her, I was a mess. I was in a dark night of the soul. I was, pushing really hard to make it. Newly it came into Silicon Valley. I was just coming out of the 10 years of samsara. I wanted to follow Siddhartha's path from that beautiful book by Hermann Hesse. And, I was taking modafinil, caffeine, Adderall, just to, keep me going and really, really make me be able to succeed. And my body was just giving up. And I had the good fortune at a Peter Thiel Summit, to talk with somebody who was a very successful person in Silicon Valley, and he advised I see her. And so I felt energetically what she was doing in energy healing treatment, and I remembered, I was studying Wicca, witchcraft, Buddhism, Taoism, paganism, Tibetan Buddhism as a teenager. And eventually, through going to her school and receiving sessions from her and 8, 9, 10 other people at, many would say a mastery level of awareness, awakening, skill, I gained understanding of the energy body. I gained some maps, a lot more, I believe, through my own reading and channeling of the understanding of how the body, third dimensional physical reality, as I talk about in my book, it's 9-dimensional model of reality, fourth dimensional astral energetic, meridians, chakras, chi, ki, prana, fifth dimensional causal, oversoul, quantum field, as Joe Dispenza says, and then, all the way up, including divinity and non-duality, oneness, unity consciousness at ninth dimension, which is also the first dimension, a point. And at one point I did use psychedelics. I microdosed about 200 times, and I had heavier doses about, it's arguable because it's custom to each person, but I'd say I had about, 11, 12, 13 heavier doses because it's relative. Everything I took, I researched it very heavily. But the main thing that helped me really grow is working with very skilled people. And every time I used a plant medicine with reverence, with prayer, with research, balancing out my biochemistry with the right supplements, really praying and blessing over it, doing protection, it would be like a lightning flash in a forest. And I ultimately came to realize that, the light body, the rainbow body, enlightenment, you generate your own light. And whether that's the light communication between cells, as researcher Albert Fritz Popp talked about, or those other things, if you're walking in the forest, you can illuminate your own path. And if you take stuff, or when you take stuff, it expands your aura, it converts your chi, your vital life force energy, into Shen, spiritual energy. It can move your awareness up in the chakras, which is why it's always good to ground when people consider taking things, and just being careful with my language. And it can be like a lightning flash. And that's why microdosing can often be more useful unless you need a big, big, powerful shift, like in an ayahuasca ceremony with, again, the right prep. And the useful thing about that is you can see what's happening next. and it can help the rational mind chill out. So when my rational mind was still deep in samsara, looking for ego, needing 18 scientific references for a 20-minute energy practice, looking at William Tiller Institute and stuff, and obviously I'm giving all these resources as mystery school homework for people who want to be on the path.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously people can rewind or freeze frame and look these up as they feel called. I was grateful for that because my rational mind's like, well, what's the value of doing this? We have, back a few years ago, digestive issues, adrenal issues, thyroid issues, fatigue issues, chronic pain, chronic inflammation. And I knew from prayers and intentions I said at 14 that I requested all those at some level to help wake myself up. The wound is the gift. Struggle can be progress. Stimulus can evoke response. And eventually, I was convinced. And the moment that convinced me, I was in my room, this beautiful psychedelic spaceship with Isis and Galactic Buddha and a few other great beings. I just why am I here? I said, and I really said it out. And I got back. Well, this is a school. Like, it's so cliche. Like, that's not helpful. I've read that a million times. And then I heard, go outside. So I went outside, and it was a decent night. There were a fair amount of clouds, and there were about 10, 12 stars visible. And I just knew. And I shifted into an aligned state of knowing. And the clouds vanished, and hundreds of stars appeared. Now, many people might say those are ships of star people, aliens, ETs, Alpha Centaurians, Pleiadians, etc.
Did you did you have anything at this time?
I'd say I had 3 mushrooms psilocybin in my system.
Yeah.
Enough to help my rational mind relax, but not enough to make the physical world completely shift. Colors were a bit more vivid.
Yeah.
But it was enough to help the rational mind relax. And
we
so
had the same. I'm asking. We had the same encounter. It was magical. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing scientifically is once the clouds vanished and all the stars came out, I called my partner and I told him, hey, guess what happened? And then as my ego activated and I shifted away from a state closer to unity consciousness where I was the clouds and I was receding myself, as opposed to David making the clouds go away. Came from oneness or a proximity to oneness. The clouds all came back and the stars went away. And I'm like, hey, sorry, I have to call you back. So I hung up the phone and did it again, or it was done. Mm-hmm. And, the nice thing is it was familiar. Whether you call it a siddhi, a miracle, flashy magic, whatever you call it, it was the same feeling as when my dad was dying on the operating table. And I talk about this in chapter 12. And I just got to a state of knowing and surrender. As I saw what appeared to be his kidneys and fluids flowing, because the doctor 15 minutes earlier said he could die. He might need dialysis for life. And I just knew he was fine and whole and perfect. And instead of hours of surgery, which was told to us, same doc came up 5 minutes later. Mom freaked out. And I just knew. And he said his kidneys started functioning again. He's fine. We're sewing him up. He won't need dialysis for life. And it was that same knowing that helped cure sinus infections in people, helped cure sprained ankles, healed my shoulder twice as fast as the Stanford surgeons thought. And that state of knowing and alignment is just familiar. And it's that state where magic is, and it's effortless. And it's so beautiful.
So where does that connect come? Because we talk about the power of faith. We talk about the power of expectation. And then on top of that, though, action in the spoken word. Just knowing it, was that enough, or did you have to demonstrate? Did you have to speak it out? Did you have to tell somebody, oh, he's going to be healed? Like, was there some type of action that had to take place versus just, I know it?
No, a lot of people who teach goal setting, myself included, say, only share your highest goals with people who support you. And for most of the world, at least I didn't have a big tribe at that time in this community. I do now, and some consider me a growing leader. I didn't have anybody that I could really talk to. Mm-hmm. And so, and there wasn't point in sharing. Like I knew that no help was needed and I didn't need validation. When I was in middle school, NBC had a special on Merlin with Sam Neill and Helena Bonham Carter and Isabella Rossellini and Martin Short. It was a beautiful movie. Mm. And when Merlin was being trained in magic by Queen Mab and Frick, Frick was explaining the 3 levels of magic. And he said, the lowest level of magic is needing words. intermediate is hands, and the highest level of magic is thought. And when he said thought, Queen Mab took a huge cup of water, threw it at Frick, and the water froze in the air. And I just knew, this is a transmission. And so while ritual is effective to link consciousness, to move energies, I mean, we're in bodies, so using bodies generally and using the physical world is part of this experience. And as consciousness, as awareness, ultimately we don't need any of that. We don't need astrological correspondences. We don't need sacred geometry. We don't need to cast circles. We don't need to invoke calm protection if and when we're at those higher aligned states. For those of us who believe we're not and who believe we could be influenced by, say, negative or evil entities, all that stuff is actually essential because you believe it is, and your belief at your deepest levels create this reality.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes from, all of these different techniques and things that you have to do to kind of get in that state. Maybe it's used for elementary levels for you, but it becomes like second nature to actually go into a trance. You can close your eyes, take that breath, feel the prana, move it where it needs to go, and instantly you're either in that state or you feel healing move to your body if there's pain or whatever. And I think you kind of need to know that, especially if you're doing sessions with people, helping them one-on-one, because those people, especially if it's a long distance healing, right, they don't know what you're drawing, and you have these modalities and you have all these symbols that kind of get you in a trance state. They don't know. They're just on the other end of the phone or video sometimes, right? And so for you to be able to know and create it, shift the atmosphere to send forth healing, to do work on their body across the world, even, like, you have to know your stuff, right? You have to be able to go in and be able to do that stuff.
Yeah. And at the same token, we're all learning. We're all born pooping our pants, and we learn everything along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference between traditional allopathic Western medicine and, just to very, very simplify, energy healing, you need certification and licensing and a lot of experience to do heart surgery. But to do Reiki on somebody, while there are certifications and things that exist, you can just do it. You don't need to be licensed. It's not regulated. And so if you're working with a healer or somebody who claims to be a healer, unless you know and believe they're skilled, or you've read a bunch of reviews or done something similar to check them out,
yeah,
you could be at any level of skill.
Expectation level when you show up,
Right. And yes, you seeing them as a very skilled healer strengthens them as a healer for your experience. Yeah. And ultimately, we are co-creating this reality. So, there's a woman who lives nearby, and she offers Aya ceremonies, but I've heard she hasn't had deep training. I've heard she hasn't gone to Bro and hasn't apprenticed deeply with people. She just gives ceremonies. And there's a lot of criticism for people like that, or people who do healing because they went to one seminar or got a little initiation and don't have dozens of people getting results. So for anybody looking for significant healing help or support, while somebody who you could call a novice could help you, like any field, even without regulation, it's good to work with somebody who has the experience. And if they don't, maybe you can get a free session, maybe a discounted session, maybe it's research. But it's good to have a continuum of skill. And that's something that doesn't really exist in this field very, very widely. And so bringing in the East and the West, uniting the masculine and the feminine, bringing together the creative and analytical parts of our brain, becoming whole and holistic and integrative, maybe we can get a scale of healing. And, just as chi can arguably be measured and the strength of energy and prana can be measured based on a lot of different tools, subjective and objective, maybe a session is at a power level of 60 out of 100 or out of 1,000,000. And eventually we can help quantify people's abilities, which will help people know how to grow as quickly as possible. Because if you want to regrow trees, that's a skill. And if you fail or succeed at a very low level, maybe you increase the growth rate by 1.5%. If you measure it, you do it 35 times and you can double the growth rate, quadruple the growth rate. And if you accept and allow it to flow, like that, the tree can grow instantly. But most of us don't believe that's possible, so it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. That's good. It's the power of belief, man, and then moving from belief into knowing and creating it. And it's just the weird thing, man, when we look at the nature of reality, Like, we get to manipulate this stuff. It's really interesting on what it is, and like, we create it as we speak it. Abracadabra. We're talking about magic, right? So it's really interesting when we're talking about that. I've been talking about this, and I mentioned it to you just a little bit before we went live, but we have a lot of creatives out there, a lot of empaths and stuff. They're very creative, crazy ideas. I myself am one of them. I know you are, but you have all of these things that you can do. You can write a book, you can do sessions, you can do lectures, you can do webinars. You want to do them all. And then at that, other stuff's coming. And so you get started on one path for a week. I'm going to do this. And you give it a week. Another idea comes. You immediately leave the first one and jump on the second one. Then you try to juggle all three. And then you want to work on this album. And then this person wants you to be in a band. And you're like, hey, I love to be in a band. And so you're trying to juggle all of this stuff. If you picked any one of those streams and stuck with it out, it would definitely succeed. It's the power of consistency, right? But we have this thing that just likes to pull us in different places and do all of this cool stuff. And it doesn't really work out. You were going to give some insight on that before we went live, man. So I wanted to kind of pose that question for you again. The power of consistency and seeing something out.
Yeah, brother. Well, on my path, I had the good fortune of starting 13 companies, learned a lot. Some of them were short-lived, just an experiment, just research. Others did kind of well. When I was teaching artists how to develop business skills, and when I was taking my paintings, and I have a lot of activation portal paintings on my site on magicalgoldenage.com, I looked at what does it mean to be a successful artist. And I found a person, Chris Roberts Entho, who had galleries in New Orleans, who had shown around the world. She did physical fabric art. And it's hard to create that in bulk. A lot of artists want to scale, and having people weave your stuff at whatever wage is arguably more expensive and a harder business to succeed in than, say, getting prints made by, clicking a few times online. She had a beautiful house, lived near a lake, very successful. She seemed like a multimillionaire. And I had the great fortune of hiring an art dealer who used to work for her. And, wasn't competitive. We're in a different industry. It was totally fine. And so as an artist and somebody running a company, I felt that balance and that conflict between the pressure to produce as an artist, as a salesperson, as an entrepreneur, because if you sell your work or you're paid for your creative output, if it's voiceovers or spoken word or music or anything, and the freedom to create. And I was thinking about this thing called a sellout when I had all these paintings and I wanted to learn all these modalities. And the art dealer said, you need to make 24 like this one. You need to make a series. I'm like, but how am I going to learn if I do that? And I learned consistency. I learned that, while the haters could call it selling out, I chose to take a positive view of sharing my creativity with the world and learning how to develop deep expertise and mastery. Because even if you, say, do psychedelic ISIS portraits transmissions, I mean, this is very, very rich. But the man who does this, I met him at the Oregon Eclipse Festival. He does a lot of these. And you could say, well, these are all the same thing. Are you just selling out and doing all the popular gods, goddesses, ascended masters, etc.? You could say, well, each painting learns more. I learn more. With each painting, I channel and I bring something through, and that is the practice, and there is the newness. And Todd Henry, wonderful, wonderful guy, he has a podcast and a book called The Accidental Creative, and it talks about being creative on demand, being creative in a business professional, on-the-go, financial analytic world. He talks about things like rails, where if you're making a painting, you're making a song, you're choreographing a dance, if you put rails or boundaries on what you are producing, because to the world it's a product, even if you use different terms, or at least to some people in the world, and it's a work of beauty and creation and art. Say you give yourself 3 hours and you need to get it done. There you go. If you look at R&D, if you look at a company, there's production costs and production times. And so as an artist, if you learn things like Rails or the hundreds of other things Todd teaches, you realize, just like riding a bike, just like learning to do backflips, just like martial arts, qigong, meditation, anything, there's a modality for you. There's a few techniques that would really well serve you now. And if consistency and habit building is the hardest one, I'd recommend Zen meditation. And a really, really great talk about that is actualize.org, Leo's video, How to Become Enlightened, the exact step-by-step process. It's a YouTube video, and he's a great, great teacher. And he says if you just sit in traditional Zen. No thought, no movement, don't scratch an itch. If you catch your thoughts going to whatever, food, body stuff, to-do list, you return to the breath or, some one point of focus, and you just be. And it's really hard. And when he made that video, I believe he said his max is an hour and a half. When I studied Zen martial arts with Sifu Robert Brown at the Berkeley School of Martial Arts, great school, big adult population, that's what we did. And for the higher ranks, you have to do that for 1 hour, 2 hours. No thought, no movement. And he said, if you sit in Zazen and it's a test, and your meditation test is 1 hour, and you scratch your head, then you fail your test. And people ask, what if you sneeze? And, to the newer students who didn't have as much prior experience, he's like, your body is what it is. Somebody's like, what if you fart? But to the senior students, you realize when you have higher awareness, you have higher mastery of the body. And you can sense the energy wanting to leave you as a sneeze or whatever.
Yeah.
And you transmute, release it through the breath, energetically, consciousness otherwise, and then you don't. And you maintain that stillness, as we hear of the figures of legend who meditate for days, weeks on end.
And you just focus on the nothingness for the whole hour and a half. Usually with my personal meditations, and it hasn't come through any training or anything, that's what I would do. I would get all the thoughts out. Those other thoughts come in. Hey, you need to be doing this. Hey, what are we going to have for lunch? I can't wait for my brother to come over tomorrow. All these different thoughts that come through, and you just try to push them out. Then you're like, okay, how does a washing machine work? You know what I'm saying? All these crazy thoughts are just coming in, pushing them out and focus on the nothingness that's there. I feel like eventually, for me, other things start happening as you sit in that state of, and you access higher states of consciousness. You go into trance state, lights appear, you get higher vibrational thoughts, really deep understandings. Is that a different form?
If I could interrupt, I apologize, just to clear up a little confusion. So Zen meditation teaches deferred gratification, which a lot of studies and Stanford studies, behavioral psychology show, if you can delay gratification, you'll be happier, get better grades, lower crime rates, you'll be healthier.
Mm-hmm.
That's different from trance. Zen meditation is no matter what's coming up, I am here. Trance is something else. Zen meditation can help with consistency, and it can help with siddhis and other things because you stay present. Trance is when you are a bit lucid, a bit liminal, and you allow yourself to flow, and there may be some intention there. And they're very different things. I would argue trance is much more valuable for awakening, and Zen is much more valuable for focus. However, I believe for most of us, it's easier to shift to high dimensional states of trance. And in trance, if you can get to unity consciousness or non-duality, even for that brief flicker a lot of us feel, so much for you. And you can get there through Zen, because all paths lead to God, Goddess, Unity, All, Universe, Source.
It's beautiful. It changed your life, man. Definitely. Just like you said, if you're looking for enlightenment, start there.
Yeah.
Things start to happen. Wanted to ask you too, man, because there's a bunch of different things on your website. You're talking about magic, and you've healed people from the brink of death, like you said. You've made it stop raining and start raining. A lot of us have kind of done those things, and it's whether if I did it or I have the power to do it or we have the power to do it type deal. It's interesting to explore. But one of the things you have here, you say, and I don't know if this is regarding the star experience that you have, but you said I've summoned shooting stars. And so for my awakening there was a lot of shooting stars. There were a lot of moving stars, you know what I'm saying? And there was telepathic communication with those ETs or higher beings or the angelic council. Have you had those encounters as well, where you're stargazing and just start seeing crazy stuff in the sky? That changed everything for me, man. It really messed me up.
Dozens, brother. Once my partner and I were staring at a beautiful moon, and as we were staring at it, we shifted into like love, release, surrender, flow in the moment, and a shooting star went right through the moon. Now, I've had a lot of shooting star experiences, and I think one of my favorites is Michael Hrostowski, really good friend, great men's coach. His brother, David Hrostowski, wrote The Ascension Manual for Planet Earth, channels Bergial, a star being, very high level awareness. Really, really great men. I was hanging out with Michael, and he said he was in a hot tub with some friends, and he said, "Shooting star, activate," and it did. He was like, "Whoa!" And then he tried it again, if my memory is correct, and it didn't happen again.
Yeah.
Sometimes, maybe one time it did, and the rest it didn't. And that's our rational mind is like, "Oh, I don't want to leave this, this world. What if I could do it all the time? I would trip out and go crazy." And the beginner's luck to inspire us. But my favorite experience was I tried that. I tried just the incantation, shooting star activate, because I wasn't fluent in Sanskrit at the time or anything else, so it didn't sound all epic, saying some chant.
Yeah. I started speaking in Hebrew and stuff.
Yeah.
It was under the stars. Yeah.
I was outside, and I was looking up at the stars, and I just had the knowing to lay down on my back in the grass, front yard. So I did that, and I just felt aligned. They aligned me. I aligned myself at higher levels, and I just felt a pulse from the star, chakra by chakra. And after I was feeling it, and they're like, "Hey, this is the way we can interact with you. Here's a choice. We can take you to a higher level of activation, or we can take you around the solar system, around the galaxy." We being Alpha Centaurians, primarily, I worked with them a lot. And at the time I was scared. I didn't want to be one of those people who had a massively powerful ET experience, and that defined me. And that's what people came to know me as.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't mind it, because it would just be one more thing on the journey. And that's
right.
So thank you. There was a ship above the house. I said, "No, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take the transmission, please." And so as the pulses of energy continued and got to my throat, I just had the knowing and the telepathic urging, release it. And so as it got to my throat, I went, to release the energy. And at this second, the sound started to leave me. A huge shooting star streaked right across the sky, exactly where I was looking. That's and awesome. Shooting star, you could say it was a ship that initiated a drive and moved really fast, and they called it a shooting star. But that was one of my favorite experiences.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I've had so many in stargazing, and it's that it'll change your life, man. Like you said, it's not like being defined that, okay, this is my calling. I'm gonna, this is what I'm gonna be known for. And it's funny too. We're talking about the repeatability, and so there was something that Terrence McKenna said, because you know what I'm saying, talking to people into ufology, he says what we in the psychedelic community have that the UFO community doesn't have is repeatability. They said we can take ayahuasca and we can go communicate with the elves on command. We can go deep on the psilocybin encounter and commune with these entities on command. And he said what we have and you in the UFO community don't have is repeatability. People who have been contacted by ETs, people who have been stargazing and seeing that stuff. And so in that, that was a long time ago, right? Terrence is gone. He's been away for a while. I think it's changed a little bit now, right? With anybody who is able to go out there and make contact. You have Stephen Greer, James Gilliland, these guys who I feel like have coined the term the CE5 contact initiative, where you can go out and actually make contact yourself. And for the most part, I feel like that does have repeatability, that whenever you want, you can actually go out there and contact these angelic beings of higher intelligence as well. And they will show up in a shooting star. They will all types of feats that they're able to do, but it's just that knowing that they're there. And so a lot, a lot has changed since Terrence has been here, but that's interesting that he felt that way back then. Listening to it, I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that he said that, because early on I seen the videos of Prophet Yahweh. I don't know if you're familiar with his videos back in the day, but he was one of the first that kind of went mainstream with the term summoning UFOs. I can go out and summon UFOs, and they had a news crew out there, and he had his ways of doing it. But then there was all these other people who started popping up saying, yeah, this is a thing. We can summon the angels, the Elohim, whoever you think they are, and they show up. It really changes the game when we introduce this pattern of repeatability. But like you said, it's not on command. We're not here to
I would
do our dance for you.
I would offer some contrast in that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead. You're good. Yeah, I'm done.
In the 1700s, if the average person wanted groceries delivered, the average person couldn't manifest that unless they were deep in a community and ask somebody for help, or they were an elder and they were being taken care of. But the average person couldn't have groceries delivered unless that was part of the culture. Now you can summon Instacart, you can summon Uber Eats and get groceries delivered. So culture evolved, memetics evolved, technology evolved, spiritual, physical technology evolved. So back in the day, when stuff couldn't be done on command, the field, the collective field, morphogenetic field, wasn't where it is now in most people's awareness. And so Greer has helped. The CE5 protocol is great. My friend Michael Mazzola, who directed Greer's movie Unacknowledged, it's the #1 iTunes store movie. Anybody who's curious about ETs and not convinced, that movie has so many testimonials, great data. There's a lot of things that can be replicated. Dean Radin, his labs at IONS, Institute of Noetic Sciences in Petaluma, there's so much out there that talks about replicatability. The difficult thing for most of us is realizing what Isaac Bonwitz in his book Real Magic, before Dean Radin wrote it, is called cata-psi. So in electronics, you have a cathode and an anode. You have a positive and negative charge. And if you have cata-psi, anti-psi, anti-belief, it can actually counteract somebody's belief. And I wrote a chapter on this called Power in book 2. And now I'm actually being told it'll be book 3. It's higher level teaching, so I need to make sure people are ready for it. If you really believe, say your belief is at a level 80, and there's somebody who has anti-belief at a level of 90, likely it will be hard to repeat.
Yeah.
If doubt comes in whatever form, if you share it on Facebook and people call you crazy, as happened to me at the beginning of my journey, then they can take your belief down through their cata-psi. Yeah. However, if you have 1 million people believing in something like St. Virgin of Guadalupe, a lot of people said they levitated, and a lot of people said they saw it, right? You have enough skeptics read that article. The people who saw it are not, most of them aren't in their physical bodies anymore because it was a long time ago. And the newer cata-psi said, oh, maybe it wasn't a physical levitation, maybe it was a metaphor. I think it was physical. And so when you have the right conditions and you factor in belief into the scientific equation, whether you link it to quantum or anything else, then you affect things, you change things, and you can repeat stuff. Vishen Lakhiani of Mind Valley talked about a man who could grow plants and farms and crops very, very quickly. And Vishen was talking with this guy who had this repeatable, demonstratable, measurable skill on command. And we think of beings like that, or read Autobiography of a Yogi, the only book Steve Jobs recommended at his funeral. And Autobiography talks about beings who could do stuff on command. One guy maybe wasn't the most moral person, could make things materialize and dematerialize with the help of an astral being named Hazrat, who he learned through certain secret teachings. So there's, like anything, can most of us do a backflip on command? No. Can we be trained for it? Yeah. Might we need to do some physical healing or conditioning as a prerequisite? Sure. Magical skills, same thing.
That's awesome. You kind of bring that to the table in the form of percentages. How many of you believe? Okay, you don't. So going out with the CE5, which we've done, like I've gone out by myself and had incredible encounters, and then tried to take people with me to recreate that. And there were times where we were under an open sky with, not a cloud in sight, and we seen nothing, couldn't see anything. But then there were other times where we went out and I've coached the person, like coached them and showed them documentaries or say, hey, this is what's going to happen. We're going to go out. We're going to meditate. We're going to make contact, and they're going to show up. And this person is expecting to see when they go out, wanting the experience and expecting it. Man, we've had crazy visitations, like 12, 13 ships within an hour flying by. And it was just, life-changing or whatever. But it's and you can feel it too. Like if you go out there and there's 7 people who are just really wanting to tune in, and one person's just like, oh, what are we doing? This is stupid. I don't even believe, and it can change the vibe. And I always talk about this, man, the power of placebo. And I come from the Christian background, so talk about Jesus a lot, right? We're talking about the Son of God in human flesh or whatever came and it has all power and authority. He would go to cities and he would heal everybody, like everyone in the city who had an ailment, anyone who suffered with lower level energies and demons, they would be healed and delivered. he would go into other cities where people knew him, your Facebook page where people know you, and there was all these skeptics and things. Oh, this is the son of a carpenter. We grew up with him. He's just a regular guy. And they didn't believe him. And this guy who supposedly has all power and authority in him was rendered powerless because of the naysayers and the people who didn't believe. They kind of put a cap on what he can do. And he left that city and wasn't able to help anybody. That's very interesting when it comes to the power of belief and expectation.
Yeah, I mean, take it the same thing. You have a heart surgeon. He goes in surgery. People boo him. People hide his instruments. People turn off the lights. He probably will elect or not be able to do effective heart surgery unless he's, super, super badass. And not to say that Jesus wasn't a badass, because he was at many times one with all things. And, we all learn. There's a great book called Lamb, which talks about the story of Jesus according to his best friend Biff, his childhood pal, written by Christopher Moore, who wrote A Dirty Job and Secondhand Souls. Brilliant, funny author. And it talks about Jesus going town to town, healing people. And at one point, he was talking with a woman and he said, "Sin no more." And she said, "What will I do for a living?" And she was a harlot.
Yeah.
And another time he was walking through a market and there was a woman and he slapped her on the face. And the husband looked at him and he's like, "Sorry, sir, couldn't be helped." She's like, "Honey, I'm back," as if he healed some out-of-body personality distortion type of thing. And it talks about when he was studying with Balthazar, Melchior, the wise men, and when he was journeying around the world, learning this stuff, learning the art of materialization, learning internal alchemy, learning about chi, learning about enlightenment. And we can do that too. We talk about learning, knowing, understanding Christ consciousness. And there are things like prophecies. There are things like after you go through a certain number of lifetimes, after you incarnate with X conditions, then your soul, your body, your spirit is evolved to a certain point, and you have more access, you have more memories. Both Damanhur and Sri Yukteswar, Sri Yogananda's Kriya tradition has a way of helping people evolve and ascend quicker and understanding this process. And I would offer that any path you believe is a true path, whether it's a Christian path or a Kabbalah path or any of these, can take you there. And as you get there, you level up and your skills level up and your psi, your knowing, levels up. So those naysayers at a 90, you get to be a 3,500, and then you may shift. Or if they're not ready to see it and the veil of Maya around them is so thick, they'll deny it, or they will actually see physically something else in other people, or psychologically they won't store the memory. It's like those studies, those great studies where people are playing basketball and like a big hairy gorilla runs on screen and runs off, and some people don't see it. Or those meditations where the audience, and you close your eyes and you're told to visualize all this blue stuff and look around the room and then talk about things that are red, and you don't see them, or you see many fewer of them. And so it's psychological priming at its root, and it's conditioning, and that's okay. Some of us are born to be plumbers, thieves, electricians, artists, engineers. We're not born to wake up. We're not born to do magic. Yeah, the human collective soul is collectively shifting into a golden age, raising the power levels of magic, all this stuff. But just like, we don't love it when people of certain traditions proselytize, get up on their soapbox and say, do this or you'll be damned, or follow us or pester us like some people's relatives do, because we need to find our own path and live our own truth. It's the same thing. So if there's a person who's like, magic isn't real, this stuff is wishful thinking, it's all placebo, even though there's the science, even if they read the studies, that's okay. That's what they're here to do. And except in very rare circumstances, it's not our job to convince them. They'll come when they come. Just like a lot of people could talk about veganism, and there's veganism and just veganism, where, if you're vegan, you don't have to tell everybody about it.
Militant anything is nasty.
Yeah.
So, and I know before we went live as well, we talked about some herbs and things like that people can use and kind of implement within their, day-to-day as supplements. There was a couple that you were referring to me to help for sleep and things like that. And, my wife does essential oils and things, but there's some herbs and stuff as well. Have you had any encounters with tobacco? I know tobacco was
Yeah.
big with like the Mayans and Native Americans clearing the air, especially with like the ayahuasca ceremonies. They use tobacco and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm personally a fan of rapé. There's a great vendor online called Queen of the Forest. There might be less expensive brands, but Queen of the Forest is very high quality, recommended to me by Adam Ottman, a great, very experienced acupuncturist and shaman. And I take the mint julep rapé. And rapé, for those who don't know, I have it here. Um, it's a type of tobacco you take up your nose. And I had never snorted anything in my life. And it's very unique. You have this thing called a caripe. And what you do is you take the rapé and you put a little bit of it in here. And it's better to have it demonstrated in person. But if people are curious, again, talk to your healthcare professional. You take a little bit. That's a fair amount. So just a little bit. It's actually more than most people would need.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to demo it because sometimes teaching through experience is more helpful. So you need to do it with both nostrils, or I do it with both nostrils. I'm not giving recommendations, and it's great for grounding, and it's great for shifting energy if you're not yet at the point where you can do internal Taoist Neigong and influence Qi just by thought. And I'm actually not going to do it. I'm getting a line that I don't need to, but you put the longer end in one nostril, you pinch the other nostril, and you go at this one, and then this goes up into the nose, and then with Kleenex, you can blow it out, and you can drink water, and sit, pray.
How long do you wait to blow it out?
You just trust your body. Sometimes I need to right away. Sometimes I wait for the mucus to build. Sometimes my body needs more time to absorb it.
Yeah.
And it's all from laziness. There's times when I know I could take 10, 15 minutes or get super aligned if I'm granted the ability to, and then in a second not need anything. Yet I don't yet appear as a floating ball of light. I still have this body, still working with the biochemical 3D world. So I still use rapé, and I feel like anything, it comes down to intention. There's studies of people who smoke cigarettes and live long lives and don't get lung cancer. And then there's studies of fear-based marketing and advertising, and people who smoke have all this very difficult health things happen to them. And so the continuum of tobacco of experience is different for anybody. Some people might be like, "Oh, this guy snorts stuff; he's a wacko," and that's their truth, right? I feel that anything that you bless, that has research behind it, that has other people talking about it, that you feel works for you, that you tested a smaller dose to verify it's all right, wait 5-10 minutes, see how you feel, give it 72 hours, because that's really how long some things can stay in your system, if not longer, and really see how it shifts you. But a lot of people in our community need grounding. There's Wi-Fi signals, there's EMF waves, and even though as your rainbow body grows, people say those go through you and not get absorbed, ultimately there's a lot of things affecting us. The dopamine circuits of devices, cannabis is legal in many more places, and more people are using that. A lot of people use caffeine. Blue light is a thing. So grounding is great. And if we don't have a lot of time with our skin in the ground, or we don't have these really cool hematite pyramids, I'm going to start offering these for sale actually in my store. But this really neat hematite pyramid, you can just hold hematite and it just can ground you energetically. But if you want something strong and fast, or you're somebody who gets triggered or in heightened states of anger or anxiety, I found rapé to be extremely helpful. Like Tim Ferriss, I experiment, and I push things, and I have pushed things traditionally because I want to know. And I want to know the upper bound of tolerance and what microdosing and megadosing, unless there's strong warnings against it, can do.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to be able to ground very quickly on command in an action that takes 2 minutes and generally normalizes in 10 minutes. Some people get dizzy with rapé. You have too much of it. You purge. One time I needed to purge, so I used 5x dose, and I purged from both ends pretty intensely for a few hours, and I was grateful for that. But of course, it's not for everybody.
It's legal. Let's let people know that. Some people want to know how to get it. It is legal. Usually
US,
shipping from
I'm pretty sure other countries.
Peru. Usually coming from Peru. I get mine from catacuna.com. It could be a quite, sometimes hard to get it there. Now some weird stuff on taking payments or whatever. But yeah, it's good to you know what I'm saying, to help you purge, to help you go within and to ground.
So,
And
so
to
is eucalyptus. After rapé or after sauna, eucalyptus is wonderful.
That's funny.
I just
That's
did
what I was smelling as
out.
well.
Oh
The
yeah,
eucalyptus.
nice,
Yeah,
brother. Cheers.
yeah. But I had a bunch of stuff, you know what I'm saying, weighing on me, and it was just really easy for me to go outside, put my feet on the ground, you know, and use rapé to just release that stuff,
Yeah.
offer it up in prayer, give it to God, and just release it. So the rapé really helps with that too. It's really
It
good.
does. And
When you
in
do
Damanhur,
it, like, to just go within. I don't like to do it in mid conversation and hang out. Like when I do it, I wanna go into that feeling when I do it, you know?
for sure. And in Damanhur, for people who feel they need to or they're used to smoking tobacco, I got this oil at Damanhur shop in the Damanhur Kriya, and it's essence of tobacco. Let's see if this thing can focus on it. Anyway, it's essence of tobacco, and you just open it and you smell it. And so if you like aromatherapy, you can just get tobacco essential oil from any quality producer online. It can also ground you.
There's some questions here in the chat. Chris Garner wants to know if you can go into a little bit more detail about rainbow body and the different rainbow body, etheric body, astral body, light body. There's these different levels and how to attain that, and you know what I'm saying, where that comes from for people who haven't never heard of that term.
Yeah. So just to preface, a fair amount of what I'm going to share is my unchanneled stuff, but I am also drawing from sources. Rama Orr, my breatharian teacher, wonderful man, and some Golden Dawn stuff, and some Tibetan Buddhism stuff. Tibetan Buddhism is a really, really great place to learn about this if you want to go deep in depth. If you can find somebody who's a good teacher or you find the right texts. But essentially, I'm actually going to shift states, so just give me a second because I really want to be able to offer a lot here. So the rainbow body is a natural state. These bodies are to support us in an experience we think we need. We are light. All light, all spectrum together is rainbow. And when you look at the rainbow body, that is a body. Your physical body is a body. The pain body is a body. The emotional body, earth, air, fire, water, akasha, wood, metal, these are all bodies. The rainbow body is a summary of all of them, and it can be one of the last bodies you'll ever need. In the rainbow body, all things are. Rainbow is all the spectrums of light. It's a prism. And when you connect with the prism of in and through your pineal gland, and you can take in those other energies beyond the visible spectrum, then you start noticing and seeing with and through that third eye of Horus, bridge of the pineal. And through the rainbow body, we can really see, understand, feel, know, and create the essence of the material world, because it all starts with light, coalescing through the organizational structure of sacred geometry. Physical matter coalesces and becomes. Through quantum observation at higher states of awareness, we can redirect that shifting and that coalescing of that sacred geometry and of the spectrums of light we wish to bring in. Earth, air, fire, water, sadness, joy, intensity. And each of these frequencies of light, of information, of communication, which we're finally learning and understanding, information from the sun, information of light through fiber optics, all is one. That the rainbow body is us and is something we utilize. As we utilize our hand, we can utilize that which is non-physical, that which is rainbow. It is special, and it just is.
It's beautiful. That's a good way to put it. I mean, I like the fact that you said that rainbow is all the bodies put together in Ascension. And
So
for those,
just to offer, that was less David and more higher stuff. So when you said I said, that was
okay,
a bit more than just this personality.
give the honor back, definitely. And also, too, I'm showing on the screen for those of you who want to look into it. A good friend of mine wrote a book on this, Tantric Rainbow Body Breathing by John Hooks, a.k.a. Illuminati Congo. It's a short read, but there's some great information along with pictures in there, too, if you guys want to check that out. He's a good brother. So that's what's up, man. So if anybody has any questions in the chat, go ahead and send those in, and I'll try to translate them for my brother. And but, yeah, if there's anything else that we didn't talk about, man, that you wanted to touch on while you were here, let's get into it, man.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people approach me for training or directions for training if we're not as much of a fit to work together one-on-one. And I want to offer a formula. And this formula is worth considering because, as you said, there's so many options out there. You know, there's Tantra, there's Kundalini, there's many types of yoga, there's the Damanhurian path, there's the Kabbalistic path, there's so many paths. I would offer 75 to 80% of the time to focus on one. Just like traditional college, that's your major. And 20 to 25% is your liberal arts, foundations, mix of everything. I mean, ultimately, they all overlap. And my primary path is that of divine embodiment. I care to express and be expressed as divine. And so learning aspects of the divine that have been named, called, anthropomorphized, Lakshmi, Thoth, Horus, Hephaestus, Apollo, Krishna, etc., help ascend to those higher levels above material reality, above tradition. And I also study Neigong. I also study meridians and acupuncture. I study herbology. I've studied bits of Wicca, Druidism, shamanism, a lot of these traditions, because we want to understand that the maps overlap. And just like when Dr. Strange met with the Ancient One in that wonderful movie, she said each of these maps, the MRI, the chakras, the meridians, was an incomplete part of the whole. And as we integrate all these different maps, then we become more whole. Yet, if we don't go deep and dedicate, we will likely not progress as much as we could. So at any time, it doesn't matter the length of time, unless you feel dedicated to a lineage or tradition or path for life, which can change because we change every second. Consider, just for the time of a month or a week, if you're voracious and the amount of information and practices you take in and do. For that month, look at how much time. Plan your training intentionally, and consider planning, just to round the numbers off, 80%, 4 out of 5 days on that one thing to go deep. And then every other question, every other curiosity you have, explore, have fun, do your 20% time, like as Google used to do for engineers. Mm-hmm. And then after that month or whatever time period, if you really feel like you've learned all that was right for you and now you want to go deep into something else for whatever purpose, cool. And that type of structure a lot of us need, and that can guarantee results. If you just read, we read for inspiration, we practice for progress. If you practice something once, twice, 4 times, you might have an experience, you might grow a bit, but if you practice it deeply 100 times, 1,000 times, that's walking the path to mastery. That's walking the path of proficiency. That helps you learn enough to really be a valuable teacher for more people. And I just wanted to offer that 80-20 ratio as one formula to consider for your training, your growth, your experience. And when people train with me, I try to offer that and hold them accountable to that so they can see growth of specific skills, healing, clairvoyance, that's money, good. Magic, whatever.
That's good, and that's the second time I've heard that term in 2 days, the 80-20 ratio. Someone was telling me about that last night, which was really interesting. Awesome. Samantha wants to know if you can go into a little bit more detail about the blue light. I personally enjoy green light, but she wants to know, what did you mean when you talked about healing from the blue light and having blue light around you?
Hey, Samantha. Great question. So there's different types of blue light. In the traditional physical world, blue light is the light that is in the spectrum. It's from a lot of lights and fluorescent lights. It affects our mitochondria. It wakes us up. That's not the light I was talking about. If you're curious about that, go ahead and research it. It's the light you want to avoid at night, an hour before bed, so your pineal gland can work properly, release melatonin, and then all the other cool things can happen related to that stuff.
Turn your TV off while you're trying to sleep.
Yeah, or if you must watch something where blue blocker, those yellowy glasses, I have some in here, or do if it's on your computer, the Flux app or the thing that makes it like candlelight light frequency.
I just started using that. It's really cool.
Yeah. What came through with the rainbow body transmission, all these colors, there's correspondences. And so blue light, that blue spectrum, and Samantha, this is a particular value for you, but of course, your question was asked because you represent a big part of the collective. 79.85% at the moment care about this question. So blue's correspondences in this context, and the context of when it was mentioned, was the frequency of sadness. Now, just like Pixar's movie Inside Out, which is brilliant and moved me to tears, I watched it twice in theaters and then a bunch more afterwards. And there's a great book based on it by the guy whose psych theory it was based on. But sadness can open the heart. And a lot of us want to feel and live in unconditional love and forgiveness. And a lot of us don't like to feel sadness, so we avoid it, we medicate it. Yet sadness is just energy, right? And if you want your heart to be opened, sadness can open it, and it's energy coming through. And while you don't need sadness to have an open heart, there's a lot of people who don't feel sadness and they're not repressing it. It is part of the unity, part of all. And if we avoid something, Elaine Forget talks about avoidance of pain as one of the primary detriments of spiritual growth, especially during childbirth and other extreme circumstances. We medicate, we numb, we escape, we disassociate. That prevents us from really feeling all that's offered and really having that moment of oneness and allowing and not restricting or constricting the physical and energetic body, circulation, energetic flow, etc. So when we're open to sadness, and our culture very much needs this at the time, and if Samantha, you do, I wish you love and grace for your related experiences and healing. When we're open to all frequencies, all of us are open. And when we're close to a frequency, such a critical frequency, then our heart can't be as open, and it's hard for love to flow. For me, I attracted a number of experiences with one of my partners who I cried a lot. And I felt a lot of sadness. And before that partner, I was with somebody and we were thinking of getting together. And then I found out on Facebook the day after Christmas that he took his life. And I found out on Facebook. And that was tough. And until I talked with his spirit and healed things, there was a lot of sadness about that. And, I can feel it, but it doesn't stay. It just moves through me because my heart is more open and my stomach is more open and my mind is open. And I can talk about that and not be triggered. And so that blue light for this context and for you, Samantha, allowing it to fully flow and release and go through can open the heart, maybe to tenderness and true tenderness, maybe to love and just pure love, maybe for empathy. And if somebody's going through a tough time, being able to empathize. I had a friend who unfortunately, well, not fortunately, he chose this, overdosed on ketamine over the summer.
Wow.
And was in the hospital when he died. And there's a lot of magic related to that and the whole container. But just for that experience, I in my body felt elation because he was so happy to leave his body. And I had to fight back a smile when I was watching the doctors give up on CPR and ask, should this be the last time of CPR? It's another code blue. He goes, the seventh one. And everybody, a young man died. And a lot of people were watching or were around it. Close friends. He was a wonderful human. And a lot of people cried. There was a lot of sadness. And I could feel their sadness because my heart was open, but it didn't overtake me. It didn't become me. Both because I could feel his elation as he had left his body, and because I wasn't constricted to sadness. And So there's a lot we can learn about it. And all things are fine and perfect in their moment, including needing to restrict if something is overwhelming. And if we repress and hold something in or prevent something from flowing, at one point it'd be good to consider healing and releasing that.
Yeah, and maybe it's being empathic as well. That you can feel what everybody else is feeling. You can it's like going to a funeral. I'll go to funerals and stuff, and for just to be there for friends of the family, and you don't really have a connection with that person, but you feel the grief in the air for their children and their spouses and things like that, and you just led to tears, right? Because you're able to feel that. I don't have no connection with this person other than they are another me, but what I'm saying, you can feel the grief in the air, and so you can mourn with those who mourn, which is really powerful as well. There's another question here, and I'm going to read this. It's a little different, but I'm going to just read it because it came through. Christian says, passing beyond the fields of your surreality and ethereal realms into multi-dimensional shapes and manufacturing infinite energy. Can this be achievable?
I'm doing it right now, which is why I close my eyes and answer the question. Yeah, it can be achievable. I'm closing my eyes just to decrease the amount of visual input. The 80-20 number, I've read that 80% of what our brain processes is usually visual input. So, multidimensional, ethereal, and beyond, quantum realm, if you like Marvel and you consider that a mystery school, I do in part. They're doing great, especially Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I see plants growing. I feel myself as one with the plants. I know myself in this moment, and I witness, as a witness consciousness, the sacred geometries floating in potentiality that coalesce through light into the xylem and phloem of the plant, through the heavens and the earth, the sun and the ground and the water, to enable things to flow to growth, and the chi of the aura that plant gives off around it. And as that energy, myself in this moment, dispersing, being absorbed and digesting and flowing, and higher at the fountainhead of potentiality, seeing the branch of timelines, the farthest branches where the energy has significant impact, inspiring marches to change government. At the lower levels, just sparking a delight at food and focusing for one moment on the joy of taking that bite of oatmeal with cinnamon and putting it in the mouth, and the teeth of the mouth surrendering to and being grateful for their service and shifting as one. And so this can continue, because this is just shifting to, I'd say, closer to 8th dimensional, which is perception of non-duality, because in non-duality, there's no words, because a word is a concept of duality. It's separate from oneness. And on that continuum, as you shift up, which, yeah, a lot of things can help us, things just are, and you can just float and be. So like anything, it is an experiential skill, and you do it through practice.
It sounds like being in the moment too, just like all of the sensory input and just kind of fine detailing it in order to kind of instantly be in the moment. Take that breath. What is that breath doing? Where's the air coming from? What's in it? Where is it going in my body? These just paying attention to the fine detail. You know what I'm saying?
That's foundational training of awareness. What was being offered was having that foundational training of presence, of the eternal moment of now, and allowing that nowness to flitter between. In that nowness, you can also just see some of the images I talked about flashing by 4 times a second. So the ability to integrate the heavens and the earth as above, so below, is you can feel that oneness with ethereal, with potentiality, with multidimensionality, and the experience can be at the pace you choose. We were talking about time and time travel and working with time, as Damanhur teaches in Alchemy. And at highest levels, we are time, experiencing ourselves. And at slightly lower levels, dimensionally, just to have a simple map, we can affect the pace of time. So it's all delightful, magical fun.
Awesome. Well, David, I appreciate this interview, man. You coming on here, hanging out with me for a little while. I really enjoyed it, and reading the chat, a lot of people have enjoyed it as well, man. Thank you so much. If you want to go ahead and plug your website, man, where people can get involved with some of the stuff that you have to offer, man, because you got a really cool website and a lot of stuff available. Go ahead and do that. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I'd say if you're watching, just to bookmark it, and if you're thinking of doing it instead of making it a to-do list, if you want to stay in touch, right now, go ahead and open your browser. And the website is magical, MAGICAL, magicalgoldenage.com. And Magical Golden Age is both a transmission and a brand and just a portal. And I didn't want it to be about me, because if and when I choose to leave this body and during this lifetime, I care to have videos and teachings and articles from many people. And I'm working on the site, so it'll have some improvements. But if when it comes up, you enter your info in the pop-up, and if you close it, just open it in incognito. And if you add your email, I send 2-3 emails a week. And in those emails, I offer transmissions, I offer videos. There's a link to my book, which on Amazon is, again, if you want to open up Amazon real quick and just type in Magic is Real, David Solomon. And through my website, there's a lot of videos. And when my website's relaunched in a couple weeks, I'll have a bit of a store selling crystals, candles, incense, teas from really aligned vendors. I'll do monthly webinars, things like that. And if you want to get in touch, I'd be happy to offer an interview, a workshop, come to speak, work with you one-on-one, etc. You can just contact me through there. And a few other ways to get involved: patreon.com/magicaljoy. If you want to support the building of temples that I mentioned, if you care to support through the energy of money, if you want to have magical rituals done for you, for your spiritual growth, your financial abundance, on patreon.com/magicaljoy. Again, magic just with a C, not the K. You can do that. And then Instagram, again, is Sorcerer David, SORCERER. Although some people say you should throw a U in there because certain people don't like the word sorcerer, but whatever. And on Facebook, facebook.com/magicalgoldenage. and facebook.com/David Magic Solomon. And on that name there, my name is David Solomon Landau because of IDs, and Solomon is an assumed name. Middle name is Sol. My last name, my ancestor is a magical Kabbalist who, if we do another interview, we could talk about him and that story, a very trippy story, learning about that identity. And, if it doesn't feel aligned to do any of those, we can just connect psychically. And if people want to be involved more directly, again, there's a lot of videos on there, youtube.com/magicisreal. Sessions, Instagram, group workshops, monthly Zooms. I'll start if you do the email newsletter. The important thing is if you sign up on email, right now, just on how the email provider works, is a lot of those emails are going to promotions or spam. And the emails have the word wizard school. They're sent from david@magicalgoldenage.com. And just, take 30 seconds, create a Gmail filter. Instructions are on the email, so it goes in your primary inbox. And, I do have some discounts in there for things. I do mention other things, but I only send 1 or 2 a week, and I try to keep them short and relevant. And I really love being of service. And so if you notice something, you have a request for something, I'll try my best to reply with a decent speed. Thanks for asking that. And of course, if you like this, if you feel any of this content is valuable, you want to share it, you want to tag somebody, you want to comment or like on either of our channels, that just helps us share with more people in the world. That helps people find stuff because the people who need it will find it. And again, if you don't feel like doing any of that stuff, if it's not aligned, then just everybody, thank you so much for showing up. It's really a pleasure and an honor to live with you in this world at this time. There's a lot of magical joy we can all experience. And collectively, we can co-create a magical golden age, however we define it, where there's prosperity, where there's love, where there's abundance, and where, as appropriate, the expressions of shadow service our highest selves. And that's okay too.
Awesome. Yeah, make sure you guys do that. And David, I appreciate it again. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, man. It was truly a blessing. And I learned a lot from this conversation too. I've been taking my notes, and good stuff, man. Thank you so much. We'll have to do it again soon.
Sure. Cheers.
All right, brother. All right. Shalom. All right. Peace. David Solomon. ladies and gentlemen, good show, good information. The guy is a wealth of knowledge, man. He has a whole plethora of knowledge and information. So really cool guy. So enjoy that, man, especially when it comes to the power of the mind, when it comes to the power of thought mixed with the power of the spoken word, which really blows my mind, and how we are co-creators with the Creator. We're made in the image and likeness of our Father as little creators, man, and we have that ability to speak things into existence, to create bliss, to create healing, to create job opportunities and finances and anything that you can dream of. That whole system of alchemy, the alchemical process to bring it into fruition, speaking it, desiring it, telling people, promoting it, bringing it to life, something that didn't exist, man. That whole thing really fascinates me, man, and the power thereof. And I've always, kind of went on these rants and stuff about these different healers and these different people who are claiming things. And I've went on, so many rants about this, and I feel like a lot of people are making it up as they go. But in the end, who's to say that that's not a bad thing? Chris Garner commented here a few minutes ago saying that, wanting to know some understanding about who defines the different dimensions and the levels of density, because there's so many people, different people saying so many different things, that there's, only 2 dimensions, and there's 5 or 4 dimensions or 11, thousands or millions. Everybody has something different that they're bringing to the table. And essentially, you're affected by whatever dimension that you agree with, or whoever told you, whoever shared that with you, because you align your belief with that. So if you believe that there's only 2 dimensions, you're going to, base your opinions and decisions off of that. Or if you think that this is the only realm that's available, a lot of people believe that. The weird thing, a lot of, Christians believe something similar than that, that there is no other spirits. There are no ghosts. There are no, just whatever you want to call it, man, elemental spirits and beings and things like that. They only believe in, heaven and hell. Maybe that's 3 dimensions. I'm not sure. But it's really interesting where you just want to acknowledge the good stuff. Or you just want to, you believe in God and angels, but you don't believe in demons and entities and things like that. So whatever you study, you live your life, and you base your life off it. I had a brother posted a comment this morning, just a good friend of mine on Facebook. He posted a status update about Lucifer. Lucifer is our enemy and things like that. And it was really funny that Adam Starseed Bay, as soon as he got in chat today, mentioned that Lucifer is not our enemy and things, or Satan is not our enemy. So my friend posted this comment about Lucifer being our enemy. And I don't want to, it's really hard to kind of discourse on Facebook. You can start a lot of fights there, and you lose friends trying to do that. So I really don't engage in that a lot. But I mentioned to him, the truth that I've uncovered about Lucifer in the Bible. And we just went back and forth. I gave him a couple scriptures, and he received it. He was blown away. Man, thank you, man. We've had our focus on the wrong thing. We've been thinking that this was some kind of enemy, this invisible enemy that we're fighting named Lucifer, and calling him by name and things like that. I dropped that knowledge on him. And so moving forward, that changes the way you do life. It changes the way you do spirituality. That changes the way you do warfare spiritually, the way you carry yourself, because the way you understand it and the way that you interpret it and then apply it to your life. It really blows my mind, man. A lot of Christians would maybe even get offended of saying the fact that Jesus was rendered powerless in certain cities. He couldn't heal people. He has all power, all authority. But in this human form, in the flesh, he couldn't do anything because of their unbelief. But if you have faith as small as a mustard seed is really, really small, like the smallest seed. If you have faith even as a grain of a mustard seed, then you can do anything. You can move mountains. You can say to this mountain, be cast into the sea. Whatever you believe, it shall be imparted unto you. The power of faith, belief, moving from faith and belief into knowing knowing that this is going to happen. He was talking about these different levels. I'm telling you, it was really interesting too, the way David was talking about the percentages. You know, you may be vibrating at 90%. Then he's talking about, 3,500%. Your faith level is so big, that it really doesn't, bother you that there's naysayers in the crowd. Really interesting. And then Chris Garner's pointing out, he said that Jesus said that your faith heals you, not his. Because of your faith. I've never seen such a demonstration of faith. And then people were being healed because of their faith, not his faith. I can have all the, faith for you, and it doesn't do anything. You can join your faith with mine and come up to higher levels. Now we can do that. And that's what we're trying to do, right? Chris Garner says, I'd like to hear where they came up with their dimensions. Could be something I'd like to look into. I know a lot of them get it from Einstein and then channeled information, Let's see what Christian's saying. Enjoy the seconds I've heard. And then he says, crazy thing about that, one night I came up with a thought of Lucifer not being evil, and then I heard your podcast the next day about him. Yeah, man. Really interesting how synchronicity works. Something as small as this idea of 80-20. I was on a phone conversation with a good friend of mine last night who was telling me about the 80-20 thing, but it was about something totally different, like applying it to another area of your life. 80-20. Really interesting. So, good stuff, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and jump off of here. I've got some work to do and got some writing to do that I'm really excited to share with you guys here very soon. I just released 2 new songs on my Patreon. I did the song with Laurel Erica. I believe she's about 70 years old, and she did her first rap song, and it's on my album. The song is available right now on patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Make sure you sign up, check out that stuff, support the work, support the vision, and get with me, man. I'm now taking private consultations again, where we go into the spirit realm together and do guided meditation, energy healing, any energy work and things like that. So I'm available for those private sessions again. I just started doing those, so that all that information is available on my website, TruthSeekah.com, and head on over to check out some of the stuff. Getting creative with this stuff. We're going to be offering a lot more stuff here soon with private sessions and group things like that. So I'm excited about the future. Really excited to tap in and get this writing out the way so I can release it ASAP. It's going to be good. Doing some guided meditations that I'm actually writing and tapping in and getting the modalities ready to share, and it's going to be really good. It's hard for me to even read this stuff that I'm writing. It's really good. I'm excited. So hopefully I'll be able to finish that soon and put it out there. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings. Thank you guys for all the love. Thank you guys for all the support. Everybody supporting my work on Patreon. Everybody supporting my work through whatever means you're doing that, sharing it, telling people, tuning in, showing up, co-creating with us, man. It means the world to me. Again, I'm going to say peace and shalom. I love you guys, and we'll do it again. Shalom, shalom.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.